Hi, I'm Brian Ives, and this is How You Play Your Hand. On this podcast, I'll be talking to people who've gone through difficult times. Some of those come to a conclusion, and sometimes they're issues that my guests carry with them and learn to manage. I should mention as a caveat, I'm not a psychologist, a therapist, a doctor, or a career counselor. I'm just interested in having conversations and learning what my guests have learned about themselves and what advice they have for people going through similar situations. This week, my guest is Lauren Blanchard Zaleski. Lauren has an amazing and inspiring story. She's the founder of the Facebook page Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, and she has just published the book 5 Minute Gratitude Journal for Teen Boys. Lauren, congratulations on the book, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your new podcast, and I'm excited to be a part of it and to share my story and hope to help somebody else that may be struggling and can use a little boost.
Yeah, and so I'm sure people understand, what is chronic pain, but when did this first sort of become part of your life? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah, so I was actually in the music business out of college, and then I left the music business when I had children. So when I was in my early 30s, I was home raising the kids, and I felt like I got the flu. I felt, how it feels when you get the flu. You kind of feel like a truck hits you, and I got it went on for much longer than a flu should. So I went to a doctor, and my area is a rural area, which is very Lyme disease is very prevalent here. So I tested negative, but my doctor said, I think you've got it. So he treated me for Lyme. I kind of knew it wasn't Lyme. Um, and it just wasn't going away. So it was a year of going from doctor to doctor. Luckily I'm close to Manhattan and Philly. I'm kind of situated in between both. So I was going to great doctors, and nobody could really figure out what was wrong with me, which is not unusual in the chronic pain community. A lot of the symptoms overlap with others, and it's difficult to kind of differentiate what they are. But eventually, about a year into it, I was diagnosed with both lupus and fibromyalgia. Um, so, I kind of thought things would change with a diagnosis, like, hey, I've got the diagnosis, but really nothing changed because now you've got this thing where there is no cure, and you can, there's things you can do to manage it, but really you're dealing with chronic, pretty much everyday pain, sometimes worse than others, but um, and nobody talks to you about how to handle that emotionally. They just kind of throw medications at you. So my kids were toddlers. I was raising them, and I would go through periods where I was feeling okay and then not feeling okay. They call them flares, the times where you're not feeling okay. And I was able to manage for quite a while, many years. I was active in the kids' school system. I became PTA president, like the soccer super mom. And then in 2009, I went through a really stressful period with something with, ironically, one of my volunteer positions, and stress brings about flares. And I entered into the mama papa of all flares. It was the worst flare I'd ever had, and it just went on and on and on, and it just wasn't letting up. And I had gone from this previously social person to someone who didn't leave the house, didn't shower, rarely ate. Um, it was it really kind of overtook my life, and looking back on it, I sometimes wonder if I could have done more, but I really didn't. I isolated. And then in the last year, from 2012 to 2013, in my infinite wisdom, I decided, well, wine helps until it didn't. And I developed a pretty serious alcohol problem. I had been prescribed opiates, but opiates were not helping me. So I just drank on top of them. And I don't mean to laugh. It's not funny, but thankfully I am now sober, very happily, almost 9 years. So um,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. So that was my solution to dealing with the pain. I wasn't really talking to anybody. I wasn't given any tools on how to deal with it. And booze helped until it didn't, until it really made things worse. So my rock bottom was on June 20th, 2013. I woke up in a hospital bed, having no idea how I'd gotten there. And still to this day, almost 9 years later, I do not remember anything about that day. And it turned out I had driven in a complete blackout and passed out behind the wheel of my car. Um, Luckily, I was going slowly, and I crashed into a parked box truck. I did not injure anybody. But when I woke up in the hospital, my mom and my parents were there. My husband was there, and I'm like, "What happened?" And they told me you drove drunk, and I'm like, "I didn't even go out." Like I was arguing with them because I didn't remember it. So I think back on that time and I'm horrified by it, and it was devastating and humiliating and um, just about as low as I could get. And I never want to feel that way again. It was awful. So from there, I forgot to mention like a couple months earlier, I'd gotten a smaller DUI. So in February of that year, I also got a DUI, but we kind of chalked that up to things happen. Um, yeah, so obviously I had no leg to stand on with my family when they told me about rehab and said rehab needs to happen. I did not want to go to rehab. I truly, at that time, did not believe that I had a drinking problem, which is kind of funny. But my sister actually found a program in Connecticut, um, is a drug and alcohol rehab, but they had a chronic pain program. And I was really excited. Well, I shouldn't say I was really excited. I was not excited. I was horrified to go there, but I was happy to go into a chronic pain program to help live with the pain. So I was there for a 30-day inpatient program where they taught us different ways to emotionally deal with the debilitation of living with chronic pain. How do you, when you live with chronic pain, how do you go about your day? Because, you know, hopefully I've got many, many years left. I can't be sitting on the couch all day. What do you do? So we learn techniques such as gratitude, which we'll be talking more about. Mindfulness, meditation was a big part of it. Um, Affirmations, positive psychology, but mainly connection with others and talking it through. And that's something that I was lacking. It was not talking it through. I didn't want to bother anybody, Brian, with my problem. And I thought it was depressing to go to a support group, which is funny now because I run one. Um, but I wasn't dealing with it. I was drowning it, is what I was doing. I was not dealing with it. And I believe firmly that we need to deal with our problems, walk through them, walk through the fire head on in order to heal from them. So I reluctantly went. I spent the 30 days there. It was, in hindsight, it was a wonderful experience. I feel very fortunate. It's no longer there, unfortunately. The programs like that, they just don't have insurance backing, so you have to pay out of pocket, and they're very expensive. Um, so I took that home with me. Then I get home, which was the scene of the crime, which is where I did my drinking and where I was, not bathing and all that. And I had to change everything about what I did. I had to start trying to, take baby steps into living again. Um, Eventually, I started a local support group meeting in my town because there were none, and that was going well. And then I started a Facebook group to kind of advertise for that meeting, just like as a reminder. And that Facebook group has now blossomed into, you mentioned, attitude of gratitude with chronic pain. And the reason why I started it was because there's a ton of wonderful groups out there on Facebook that deal with chronic pain and illness, any illness you can imagine. There's hundreds, probably thousands of them. But when I was going in, I'm an empath. And when I was going into these groups, people were sharing their truths, which again, you need to. But I was going in with my problems and also taking away other people's problems, which was weighing me down. And I ended up starting to feel more depressed than when I went in. So I thought I couldn't find a place that was just kind of an inspirational sanctuary. I wasn't sure if there were other people like me out there that wanted something like that. So that's what I started. We have a strict no complaining rule, which I know sounds harsh. We do offer 2 live chats a week where you can talk about whatever you want. But I don't claim for this group to be the be all end all chronic pain group. It's more of like a nice, it can be a side group, a place for you to escape comparing blood work, comparing each other's symptoms and all that. If we don't talk about our conditions, the specifics of our conditions, and we don't talk about meds, we're all on the same playing field. So we go in, and my mission is kind of solution based. Now what?
Right.
And so we do various things in the group. We state, they're all optional, of course, but we state daily intentions in the morning where you kind of map out your day in pencil because things with chronic illness can change moment by moment. We do a daily gratitude, of course. We do a three things you did well today post. We do a meditation post each day. So it's all tools that we set up, and I have a moderator team now. We're at almost 8,000 people, which I find kind of outstanding and amazing. And I'm very humbled by it because these people hurt. Some are bedbound and housebound, and they join a group willingly, knowing that they can't complain when they have a lot to complain about, you know? Um, but it's usually people that have been sick for a long time that have jumped from doctor to doctor and they're tired and they just want to figure out how can I live with joy and purpose. And that's what attitude of gratitude with chronic pain is about. And that's, I do other things, but that's really my passion and life's mission is in that group. And each day I'm letting in like 20 new people that want to join, and gratitude's a hot buzzword now. I know a lot of people roll their eyes. Um, it's more than just a hashtag at the end of a post. It's really, it's an exercise. You need to work at it when you're not feeling grateful, sharing what you're grateful for anyway, finding something. You can actually, scientific studies show you can actually rewire your brain to sort of default to the positive. And when you live with, well, any struggle, not just chronic pain, but any struggle, I'll use whatever tools I can get,
Yeah.
you know? And I can honestly say that gratitude, my gratitude practice, the group and the things that we do has been the single most effective treatment, I'm saying in air quotes, that I've had in living with this for over 20 years. It is. It helps with the emotional pain, obviously, but the emotional pain also helps with the physical somewhat. And that I've had doctors on, I do a live broadcast. I've had doctors on the show that say that as well. Um, so yeah, so that's really my main mission. I did a gratitude project in 2016 on my own on my Facebook page where I to hold myself accountable. I decided to say one thing I was grateful for each day for the entire year. I must have been nuts to even suggest this, but I knew putting it on Facebook, I held myself accountable versus like a journal where I could have just quit. Um, and my rules were that I couldn't repeat entries if I remembered. And I didn't want to make them things of material value because I wanted the reader to be able to relate or have something resonate with them. So I did it. I did the entire year, 366 days. And I'm now reposting those 5 years ago today on the Gratitude Project on my website. So that made a profound difference on my life too. Gratitude in so many ways has made a huge difference in my life.
And I mean, I know, when you're saying about it being a hashtag, like when I first heard of you, I felt a little, I didn't know anything about you,
Yeah.
but you see people like, oh, brunch was great, hashtag grateful, it's so good. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
really not what it is. And it sort of
No,
is misused in a
it
similar
is
way that religion could be misused. But I mean,
true.
to come up with 365 or 366, as you
Yeah.
said, things to be grateful for that aren't things that
Yeah.
you have is that shows true gratitude. I mean, like, did you ever get stuck? Like
Oh,
in the middle of
all
the
the
year, like,
time.
oh my God, I've got
Yes.
100 more to go.
In fact, there's a chronic illness website called The Mighty, and you can submit things there. And in April, I submitted an article about my project, and I had been stuck. And one day I said I was grateful for sriracha, the hot sauce. And I'm like, what am I doing? It's April. I'm saying I'm grateful for sriracha. Where is this going from here? But what I found, and this is going to sound so corny, but what I found, and now in reposting them 5 years later, the deeper I got into the project, the more profound my gratitudes were. I'm trying to think of what today was. The other day was famous rivalries. So like Red Sox Yankees, how much fun it is, for rooting on rivalries. What was today? I'll have to think of it. But that one wasn't very deep, obviously. That was more of a funny one.
But I feel
Um,
like they don't have to. I mean, it's like sort of like, I follow a lot of different people on social media, mostly who I do not know.
right.
And I've seen a lot of the, even people who comment about politics and people on Black Twitter and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of them value you have to preserve some joy for yourself, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what you think is going on with our democracy and stuff like that. Like, reserve some joy for yourself. And if that means like binge watching a reality show on Netflix, as sort of, shallow as it seems, like that's something, like to me,
Absolutely.
no matter what is going on in my life this week, I have tickets to see Spider-Man on Saturday, and that is something I'm going to look
Nice.
forward to, and it's something that I'm going to love. And like, could something horrible happen between now and then that might take away from it? Like maybe, but it gives me something to look forward to, and it's
Yeah.
something I know that I will love to watch. And so those are things I think you could be grateful for too.
Yeah, we actually encourage stuff like that in the group. It's self-care, we call it. Um, Reboot days instead of rest days, we rename them reboot days where you do nothing. You can Netflix all day, whatever you need to do. Self-care is really important to all of us in order to, you know, we're not meant to be busy all the time.
Right.
And I should do a disclaimer like you. I am not a therapist. I am not a life coach. I just speak from my personal experience. But those days are really important. Days of play, being able to play and have fun is super important. I just remembered what today's was. Today's was setting boundaries, being able
Yeah.
to set boundaries with people. So that was December, what, December 13th we're recording this on December 13th of 2016. So all those days into it, and I'm coming up with these really profound things. And I started off like in January, I was afraid of annoying people. So I had like 2 sentences. And by the end, I'm writing manifestos. But people seem to enjoy it.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think, like I get what you're saying. And like, that's sort of like the hashtag grateful thing. Like
Yeah.
people start to roll their eyes when it feels like a little, too,
Inauthentic.
yeah, or too new agey or something, like you're
Yeah.
selling something. But it's like, I imagine most of your people, either on your personal Facebook page or on your public one, have some idea of what you've been through, and they give you space to express yourself in that way. And I think, if they care about you, they're probably understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And back in the group, these people of all different circumstances. We actually just lost a wonderful, beloved member 2 weeks ago to lung cancer. Really nice guy from Canada, and he was attending our live chats and spreading the word of gratitude right until the end, which was like uber inspiring. And yeah, gratitude gets a bad name these days. They call it toxic positivity because I think a lot of people think, it's like you're putting a Band-Aid and not dealing with the problem. It's actually just the opposite, at least what we do in our group. It's still dealing with the problem, walking through it head on, but choosing to um, look at life through the eyes of joy, because we have a lot of non-joyful things, doctor's appointments, tests, and all that stuff, and we're just trying to make our lives easier for ourselves. So there are studies that say, saying what you're grateful for, finding anything every day, even if you're not feeling grateful, say it anyway, because you can actually rewire your brain. And for me, at least, I can only speak for myself, it works. But I would venture to guess the other 8,000 people in the group kind of think it works
So do you
too.
not feel chronic pain? Like, do you feel differently now physically?
I still live with pain. Not not as bad, not as bad. But it depends on the time. I still go through flares and all of that. I absolutely believe. Well, for one, stopping drinking was a good good thing because alcohol is an inflammatory. I have an inflammatory disease, so that was really not smart. But yeah, I still live with my conditions, and I have neurological issues as well. which still exist. But I can say wholeheartedly with 100% conviction that my pain has gotten better um, since starting this whole process, finding my life's purpose and forcing myself to talk to others, sharing my story like I'm doing right now takes away its power over me, which, helps release the pain. It really does. So no, I still live with pain. I would never claim that it gets rid of pain, but it sure does help.
I mean, that is just like, I don't know if you'd call it mind over matter, but that is so inspiring that you could actually, like you say, rewire your brain to sort
Yeah.
of experience life in a different way. I mean, that's unbelievable. I definitely want to talk to you about your book, which is right over your shoulder.
Shameless plug. Yes. I've been writing a book over the past several years about living with chronic pain and gratitude. And in April, I just finished a first draft. And then in April, a publisher came to me asking me if I'd be interested in writing a 5 minute gratitude journal for teen boys for them. And I almost turned them down because I was so knee deep in my own project. And then I'm like, what are you, nuts? You get instant author credit. You have more of a leg to stand on when you want to get yours published. So yes, and I took it. It's called the 5 minute gratitude journal for teen boys. It came out on November 30th, and I'm super proud of it. It's more than just what are you grateful for at the top of the page and blank pages. It's 120 days of prompts and quotes and positive affirmations. Um, is it geared towards teen boys? The title says so, but I read it on TikTok every day. It really can apply to everybody. So there's that, and then I just finished a second book for them. The 52-week intention journal will be out on March 29th. And
Is that going to be more like your thing of gratitude every day?
yeah, that it's 52 weeks, and each week focusing on a different tool to living a life of purpose, a life that gets you excited to wake up in the morning. And at first, I was having imposter syndrome, like, who the heck am I to write this thing? But then I remembered what I've been through, and I do every single one of these tools that I talk about. So I'm crazy excited about this book. It was much more of an undertaking, but yeah, so I talk about gratitude in it, of course, but lots of other things. Mindfulness, self care is a big one. The art of play, the art of unplugging. All sorts of tools like that.
I feel like that specifically is something a lot of people have learned during the pandemic. Like,
Yes.
you have to shut down. Like, you can't always be on. And like, I think everyone just felt so much pressure just from the world, as
Yeah.
well as whatever their family was experiencing, whether someone had COVID or somebody had a job that put them at risk of contracting COVID. But I think everybody finally realized, like, sometimes you just got to turn it off,
Yep.
and I think that if nothing good came out of, I don't believe anything really good came out of the pandemic, but if anything did, that sort of realization is at least a small positive thing, you know.
Yeah, I think some positives came out. I think some of us maybe realized how much, connection meant to us meeting with our families and stuff, friends. But yeah, I definitely, I had been making myself available 24/7 to my moderators of the group and all that. And now I stop it. I don't need to be available 24/7. And if there's an emergency, they know how to contact me.
So, what have you learned about yourself going through this entire journey? Which, at the beginning, I mentioned, like, some people I talk to, it's like, I lost a job, and so that sort of pain, for the most part, ends when you get your next one and you move on with your life.
Yeah.
With you, this is something that you will carry forever.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself in all these years having to deal with this?
I think I'm gonna cry.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a good cry. I'm so humbled by it all. I learned that, when June 20, 2013 happened, and I was a scum of the earth drunk driver is what I thought at the time. I didn't think I had anything left to offer the world, at all. Like, what the heck I'm scum. How can I ever recover from this? But I did. I dug myself out, baby step by baby step. So what I've learned is that I have value, and that I helping people is my jam. I enjoy helping people. I never want to see people suffer the way that I did. And I think suffering is a state of mind. I think we all struggle, but you don't have to suffer. That's kind of, I don't want to say it's a choice, but there are things you can do. I think the Buddha has a quote that says, "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional."
Right.
Um, so yeah, I've learned that I have value, and now I'm sitting here on this wonderful podcast talking to you. So somebody finds my story valuable. There are strength in our stories, and there's strength in connection. Um, it's a really important message.
That is definitely true. I was just going to ask you, what is your advice for other people going through this? But I feel like you kind of just answered it with that.
Yeah, sharing our stories, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I was ashamed of the alcohol part. I would tell people I was in the pain program at rehab, but I wouldn't necessarily tell them the way I got there, which certainly not flying in on the wings of victory. I was a drunk. But my sharing my story takes away its power over me. So I encourage people that have stories that are holding them hostage, if you can, even if it's just one person, sharing that it will, and letting go of resentments, because that doesn't serve us well either.
Right. And I mean, by the grace of whatever higher power someone
Yeah,
might believe in, you didn't hurt anybody with your
right.
accident. And so look at all the people you've helped. You probably can't even count them, and you probably don't even know all the people you've helped through doing what you do.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's great that you do it.
thank you.
Do you want to just promote your Facebook page just so people know where to find you?
Sure, yeah. You can go to Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, which is a group on Facebook. To make things easier for you, if you go to my website, it's gratitudeaddict.com, and you can find the group and links to my books and the broadcast and all of that on there. So, gratitudeaddict.com.
Cool. Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you do it a lot, but I know it's not always easy. And I appreciate you sharing it with me and my audience. And
Um,
thank you, everybody, for listening in or watching on YouTube to How You Play Your Hand. And we will catch you next time.
it's an honor, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.